GMs for hire.
Welcome back to GMs for Hire. I'm Matthew Perry. With me today, Will Polston. And we're back with another Hall of Famer video. Today's showcase, the one and only Buster Posey, hot off the presses, is the announcement of his retirement. He announced that just earlier today, actually, day of recording, and it's brought up some questions. A lot of people are asking, is Buster Posey a Hall of Famer? Of course, only a 12-year career, but he achieved a lot in that career. A three-time World Series champion, he won MVP. He was Rookie of the Year in 2010, a Gold Glove, a batting title, 4 Silver Sluggers, and he was a 7-time All-Star. He did have quite a full career, despite only being in the league for 12 seasons. You'll see two sides of this story today because I do believe that Buster Posey should be a Hall of Famer, and my opponent for today's debate, Will, he is against that, and he will tell you why. And we might as well just go to Will now. Will, on the base level, we'll dive in, of course, but why do you think Buster Posey shouldn't be a Hall of Famer?
Here's the thing. On the base level, when you're looking at a 12-year span, Buster Posey is probably, if not the most decorated catcher of all time. One of them at least. Obviously, I haven't gone back and looked at Piazza or Pudge or, Bench, so on and so forth, looked at the first 12 years of their career. But Posey, at least in the modern days, is one of the most decorated catchers, even of this generation, let alone just the 12-year span. Not exactly a longevity type of career, but I think that longevity is really going to screw him in the end. A lot of the points I have for why he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame are based off longevity. And yeah, 12 years, it seems like a great career, but this isn't the NFL. The NFL stands for not for long. A lot of MLB players spend, 15, 20 plus years in the league, and we're looking at that, maybe not necessarily with the catcher position, but even with the sparse amount of Hall of Fame catchers, it seems to still be the case. And so, I have a couple of stats here to prove or to at least back up my argument as to why I feel like he shouldn't. Granted, I don't want to take anything away from Buster Posey. Very decorated guy, very great athlete. I just don't know if he's been around long enough, and I don't know if 12 years is going to be enough, even though he's done quite a bit in 12 years.
And see, what you said wasn't wrong. It's definitely questionable if a 12-year player deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. You look at catchers that are Hall of Famers, and there aren't that many. Catcher is one of those positions throughout the years that has its stars come and go, but in the end, not many wind up making it to the Hall. And of course, you do have legends like Johnny Bench, Carlton Fisk, Gary Carter, Mike Piazza, who do get the call. But all of them, as well as a few others, pretty much, actually, I think every MLB catcher that is in Cooperstown did play more career games than Buster Posey. So I definitely see how that would kind of shift you towards the not Cooperstown worthy side of things. But, at the same time, like you said, in a 12-year span, he is very, very decorated. I listed everything pretty much at the beginning of the video just a couple minutes ago. And it's really impressive because a lot of players in 20 years, can't get this kind of resume that Buster got in just 12. And, obviously those 12 years were filled with ups and downs. Of course, he had the one moment years back, the collision, I think it was against the Marlins or something, where of course he did break his leg. He was out for quite a while, and it somewhat changed the game of baseball for better or for worse, because now obviously you don't see home plate collisions anymore. They were a big threat to catchers, whether they brought you excitement or not. I do think the Posey rule, you can call it, was for the better. So I'm not going to really factor the Posey rule into whether or not I think he should be in the Hall, but he was a part of kind of a significant change in baseball history because for years we were used to seeing that collision. But his impact on the game, from his first full season in 2010, he won the Rookie of the Year. And from there, for many years, he was the best catcher in baseball. He won the batting title only a couple years later in 2012, batting .336, something that a catcher hadn't done in years. And obviously the MLB have had good catchers during Posey's career. Obviously, Yadier Molina has been around. Joe Mauer was around, who I know we'll get into because he actually had a pretty similar career to Buster Posey. But looking at everything together, what he did in that period of time, I think should speak for itself. It would be uncharted territory. Like I said, no catcher has made it into the Hall of Fame with such few games. And I'm not saying he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer or anything like that, but you have 10 years. And I hope you can agree that Posey will at least be able to stay on the ballot, for most, if not all of those 10 years,
Sure.
And I'm thinking, I mean, would he not? But I'm hoping somewhat that, maybe year 5, year 6, the committee starts to actually turn the corner and come around, and he really gains some momentum. And I could see him, like 5th year or later getting into the Hall. He's no first ballot. And maybe if he played, more years and kept growing that resume, that could be the case. But for now, I do personally see him as a 5th or 6th ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah, no, and I think that his tenure alone will just keep him on the ballot. I don't think you're going to see him to get kicked off the ballot. You have to get under 5% of the vote, which, if I'm not mistaken, is like 10 people. I don't know the exact number that votes on the Hall of Fame, but it's not a lot to stay on the ballot. You have to really kind of be knocked off the ballot. And I think there will be plenty of people that keep Buster Posey on there all 10 years, but I just don't know if they're going to go into uncharted territory. And my big thing, I keep talking about the 10-year. So the way I looked at it is in 1961 was the implementation of the 162 game season. That's whenever we expanded the games to 162. That's when we have modern baseball like we have today. Whenever we talk about that, nobody has been inducted into the Hall of Fame, catcher or not. Nobody has been inducted into the Hall of Fame with under 1,500 hits since that era. And Buster Posey is, of course, under that, or he is exactly at the 1,500 hit mark. The closest was Roy Campanella, who retired in 1957. So he, obviously did not play in that time span. To continue with some of the uncharted territory that you mentioned, nobody in the Hall of Fame since 1961 has been inducted with under 5K plate appearances. Nobody has had under 5,000 plate appearances since 1961 and been inducted into the Hall of Fame. The closest was Willie Wells with 4,538, and he retired back in 1948. So, it's and then finally another one. Buster Posey would be the first catcher in the post 162 game era to be inducted into the Hall of Fame with a WAR under 50. The closest being Ted Simmons at 50.3, who just recently made it into the Hall of Fame not too long ago. There's just a lot to it. Obviously, Buster Posey, again, I can't take anything away from him. Very decorated, one of the most decorated catchers of his era. But the longevity is really what's going to screw him, I think, in my opinion. I keep seeing all these writers and everything say he's 100% guaranteed in the Hall of Fame. He's going to make it. He's all this, he's all that. The question is he first ballot or is he not? I just don't think that this is so uncharted of territory. This is literally, Buster Posey will be the once and maybe the only in a lifetime player to be inducted if he gets inducted underneath these circumstances, because now you're going to have to look at, other players who didn't play too long. You and I talked a little bit about Joe Mauer. Joe Mauer was a very decorated player, a 3-time batting title holder across the entire MLB, a feat that Buster Posey did one time. They had similar amounts of all-star appearances. If I'm not mistaken, around Joe Mauer had a couple more Gold Gloves, around the same amount of Silver Sluggers. I want to say Mauer had 5, Buster Posey had 4. But the thing is that Joe Mauer played for 3 more seasons. Joe Mauer has achieved all of these numbers. He's achieved 1,500 or more hits. He's had more plate appearances. These are all numbers and Joe Mauer has a WAR over 50. These are all stats that Joe Mauer, checks off. And this is stuff to where I could see Joe Mauer easily being an MVP candidate, or not an MVP candidate, which he also has won. But I could see him being into the Hall of Fame. And just because the 10-year, I think, is really just going to screw Buster Posey over. If he gets in, I think he's going to have to go 8, 9, 10 years, if that, but I really think that just the longevity is really going to screw Buster Posey over, because a lot of players don't make it after 12. At the end of the day, this is a game based off longevity, based off of guys who've been doing it for such a long time. And then Obviously, he's got the 3 rings. He's got an MVP. He's got batting titles. He's got a bunch of stuff that, a lot of catchers can't say that they have. But let's say we get to a spot where Yadi Molina retires, who's been doing it for almost 20 years and, is surpassed Buster Posey in all of these categories. And then he just doesn't have the MVP and the batting title. He just doesn't have the offensive, but obviously blows him away defensively. And then he doesn't get put into the Hall of Fame. What do you do then? What's the explanation for that? Because, you could say, oh, he has these career numbers more. Sure, he played 8, 9, 10 more years, but he also is such a better defensive catcher that you would think, for probably one of the number one position that requires really good defense, at least one of them. I would say the position where defense is the most important. You got to be able to stop the ball. You got to be able to stop the ball. You got to be able to stop base runners. All of this stuff. I feel like defense has to be incorporated a little bit more at the catcher position when going into the Hall of Fame. But just because of like the short stint is really just, it irks me. And for some reason, we're retiring early. I feel like I couldn't, if I was sitting there looking at Buster Posey and I know everything he's done for the game, I know everything like that. You're basically voting him in based off a nostalgia factor and the fact that he was the best at his time. But is he one of the best all time is the thing. And unfortunately, now that he is calling it a career early, I don't think we know. And I think, yeah, he had a great season this last year. One of his better seasons and probably in the last 5 years or so. But ultimately, can we say that he is going to continue to do that for the rest of his career on the way out? We don't know because he's calling it quits at 34, and so there's something about me that would feel wrong to me in my stomach to put Buster Posey into the Hall of Fame, at least early on. I may have to push off a little bit, but again, after looking at some of these stats, I've been a little bit of a Buster Posey skeptic, and now looking at some of these stats, all of these after the post 162 game era, it's honestly rubbing me even more wrong the wrong way.
You haven't been a skeptic. You've been a straight hater for a lot.
I am. I'm a hater. I'm a Buster Posey hater.
And he's like, I don't know how anyone can't like the guy, but he does check some of the boxes that Hall of Fame catchers have. He's how should I word this? There are 7 catchers with a 290 plus career batting average. He would be the 8th. He would check that box. There are 12 catchers in the Hall of Fame with a 40 plus WAR. He would be another one of those. 1,500 or more hits. Of course, he's right there at 1,500, but he does check that rather specific, maybe hit marker. But the 1,500 is a milestone for some, and he is one of what would be 12 to achieve that. And only 22 other catchers, Hall of Famers at least, have played at least 1,300 games at catcher in their career. Of course, catchers probably have the least longevity of any position in baseball, as mentioned. So that is somewhat impressive. And you mentioned Ted Simmons, and him and Ted Simmons do draw some sort of a comparison. Of course, Ted Simmons just got in through the Veterans Committee, which is good. I do think he is deserving of the Hall. Of course, it took a little bit longer than it does the normal route. And technically, this argument is not opposed to the Veterans Committee. So, but I think you and I are both kind of focusing on that 10-year span. So ideally, within 10 years, he's going to have some sort of a chance. I do definitely see where you're coming from, how it might not be enough. There are definitely plenty of Hall of Fame catchers who have done more in more time. But it's kind of your thoughts on Buster Posey, whoever is watching out there, your thoughts on Buster Posey really are going to have to depend on the length of career, really longevity. For me, it's not about how long you're there, it's what you do while you're there. One thing that does come up in a catcher Hall of Fame debate is Thurman Munson, who had a great career. Of course, it was cut short. He got into a kind of tragic plane accident and lost his life, but he was on pace to be one of the probably better catchers of all time. The pace he was on. He had an 11-year career. He also won the Rookie of the Year like Buster Posey. He won an MVP. 7-time All-Star, just like Buster Posey, actually. He had 2 rings. Posey had 3. But stats are kind of similar, honestly. Thurman Munson's WAR is just 2 higher. They both have around 1,500 hits, home runs, both actually within 5 home runs of each other. Posey has the upper hand in batting average, and a few other things. But yeah, I mean, very similar. Thurman Munson and Buster Posey. Munson, not yet a Hall of Famer. I do have pretty high hopes for him someday through the Veterans Committee. Of course, Munson's fate was different and very different circumstances. Passing away at just age 32, and I want to say Posey is 34 now. So, but yeah, that's, in many aspects, eerily similar. So I do enjoy that comparison between Munson and Posey, although I do think based on these circumstances, Posey can make that jump, because I don't have ballot results from the 80s. I think that's when Munson would have been eligible, or early 90s. I think the 80s.
His first year of eligibility would have been 84. Yeah.
There you go. So yeah, mid 80s. If you have that, do you have ballot percentages or anything like that?
Let me see. Is that typically on Baseball Reference?
Yeah, I believe so. Because that would be interesting to see how close or how far Munson was, because he was the Yankee captain. He was pretty beloved by many. I know he had quite the following, as does Buster Posey, who you could say was the captain. I know towards the end of this season they were saying Brandon Belt was the captain, but Posey's been there, for over a decade, and I don't know if they have 3 rings without him. So definitely a big part of that team.
I can't find it personally right now. Looking, I'm trying to find it, but it doesn't look like I can find it anywhere, unless I don't know where to find it, which is possible, completely possible.
Hold on, I'm looking it up now. Okay, let's see. Thurman Munson, 1984. He had what percent do you need to stay in?
5.
All right, he had 7.2%. 1985. Where is he on here? He had 8%, so he, slight jump. We're gonna go year by year here. Obviously, he didn't make it, but 1986, 8.2%. So he was slowly gaining. 1987 down to 6.8%. So perhaps that was his peak. Yep, 7.5% in 88. 6.9%. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 6.9% in 89. He hasn't fallen off yet. Keeps it going, 7.4%, a little jump in 1990. Down to 6.3. So he's kind of all over the place, but he's still in like a same.
He's staying between like the 5 and the 10%. But the problem is you need 70 to make the ballot. You need 70 to make the Hall. And if your assumption is that he's close to Thurman Munson, again, obviously Thurman Munson career ended in a completely different way. Not by choice. Let's put it that way. And Buster Posey calls it a career pretty short. And, whenever you're looking at these guys and you're saying, oh, yeah, these guys are eerily similar, statistics wise, that's great. And Thurman Munson, yeah, great catcher, phenomenal. But even then, even the people there, not even 10% are saying, yeah, put him in the Hall. A Veterans Committee, maybe, obviously Veterans Committee is going to have to be the way he finds a way in now. Obviously his 10 years is up. And it'd be great for his family. It'd be great for the Munson family. Unfortunately for Thurman, won't be able to experience that. But to me, that only helps. Whenever we're looking at that kind of argument, when we're looking at somebody like Thurman, a very decorated catcher in his time, only 11 years, but yet that kind of goes back to my stat. Even whenever I said, less than 5K plate appearances, nobody's been inducted into the Hall of Fame. Even Thurman Munson hit that with one less year in his career than Posey. So obviously Posey, 12 years, but also had a lot of time with injuries. I know he missed the entire 2020 season because he opted out.
Yeah.
He broke his leg, missed a lot of time from that. Had a couple of seasons where he's just, the injury bug is kind of bit Buster Posey in the ass. And unfortunately for Posey, it is who he is. I mean, whenever we're looking at it from a season standpoint, only 108 games his rookie year, which is fine. 2011, 45 games, which I'm assuming is the year he snapped his leg.
Sounds right.
I would assume that would be the year, but did he come back and win MVP the following year?
Also sounds right, because I think that was his first comeback player of the year.
When did Posey
2011 or 2012?
break his leg?
Oh.
2012 was his MVP year.
Yeah.
When did Posey break his leg? Posey broke his leg. Oh, yeah. So in 2011. So in 2011, he broke his leg. 2012, he comes back, wins MVP. So that's pretty badass. But after that, had 140 games at least up until 2018, where he saw 105 games. So another injury shortened season, then opts out of 2020 completely. It's just, he's missing a lot of games. Obviously there was a pretty decent injury in there just a couple of years ago where he missed 50 games in the season. Doesn't help that he opts out completely in 2020. Whether it be in fear of COVID or whatever the case, it's just a lot. Buster Posey's missed a lot of games, and you got to hope that there's some kind of, you got to hope in Buster Posey's sense, you got to hope that there's people like you, as I knock over my mic, you got to hope that there's more people like you on the ballot as opposed to me, because I'm going to look at those numbers and go, this is completely uncharted territory. We've never done this before. We have never sat here and we have never put in somebody like Buster Posey before. We have to acknowledge the fact that this is either a once in a lifetime thing, or this is the new standard. Because if you're going to start letting in people like Buster Posey, we have to look at those people whose career was shortened. We have to look at those people, even when I sit here and think about career shortened people, due to injuries, I think of people like Ken Griffey. His career was shortened. He had a lot of injuries later in his career, but he was still a stud. Mickey Mantle, his career was shortened, still played 20 plus years. Guys, absolute ridiculous. Whenever you're sitting here thinking of like career shortened guys, you're still thinking of guys who could have just done more. Yeah, we got Buster Posey, who is playing. He's playing just fine. At least he seemed just fine this year. He may have had like a small little injury stint, nothing crazy, but it wasn't like he snapped his leg again like he did in 2011. It'd be minor stuff to kind of just put him on the shelf for a little bit. At the end of the season this year, what did he able to grab? 113 games. So obviously missed a little bit of games. I'm assuming also, sit out a couple here and there. But still, that's another 45, 50 games that you're missing. That's it's going to come down to where it's just, to me, it's just not enough. It really isn't enough. Now, granted, his accolades, when you sit there and you look at his accolades, sure, he's a very decorated catcher. The MVP is huge. The batting title is huge. This is stuff, but an MVP doesn't grant you a Hall of Fame spot. Dustin Pedroia would be a Hall of Famer. And I don't think anybody's sitting here arguing whether or not Dustin Pedroia should be in the Hall of Fame. Whenever we look at that, there's batting titles. Batting titles doesn't 100% guarantee you put you in the Hall of Fame. I can't think of somebody off the top of my head right now, but I guarantee if I went back and look at the list of batting title champions, batting title 100% doesn't guarantee you a spot in the Hall. So it's great. Buster Posey, a very decorated guy, but I just don't know if enough is enough. It's great to see what he did because I want to consider like the All-Stars. I want to consider the Gold Gloves, but even you and I have had conversations in other videos in the past where this is fan vote, or this is, some other vote to where we've ignored it in the past, so to where, he's only a one-time Gold Glover. It's nothing crazy, but he's a 7-time All-Star, and that's a fan vote thing. So it's a little all over the place. Do you want to acknowledge it for Posey? Do you want to not? It's just, there's a lot behind Buster Posey, and ultimately, I just don't think the stats are there. I don't think the longevity is there, and I just don't see a one-time exemption to let in Buster Posey if you're not going to let in somebody like Thurman Munson or something like that. I think overall, over longevity, he could find his way in through the Veterans Committee, but a 10-year standpoint where the MLBPA has to vote every single year, 10 years. I don't see Buster Posey making it in.
I'm gonna, I think we're towards the end of our debate here, but I will kind of use a theory at this point to kind of justify the things I said about Thurman Munson. Now, Thurman, 10 years on the ballot, he had every opportunity possible and didn't get over 10%. Now my theory is because voters back then, the committee back then had, they were kind of spoiled with a good catching era. Guys that shared some years with Thurman Munson: Gary Carter, Carlton Fisk, Ted Simmons, Johnny Bench. Those are 4 of the Hall of Famers that were on all of my references earlier, all of yours as well. Hall of Fame catchers, no doubt about it. Of course, Ted Simmons through the Veterans Committee. Posey is in an era where, besides Mauer, who
he is the catcher, yeah,
who can have his own conversation, and we might do a video on him, although it would be similar to this. Yadier Molina and the very back end, not even Jorge Posada, really. Maybe like Jorge Posada's last year.
Jonathan Lucroy.
Yeah, like catching, there hasn't been that, elite era of catchers in a while. The 90s had Piazza and Pudge, but the 2000s and 2010s really hasn't had much. The 2010s even less than the 2000s. So my hope is that the committee will kind of show the impact that Posey had to the catching position during his career, because, there were years when he wasn't the best catcher. He was sidelined with injury, or, these past couple seasons, maybe he wasn't the best catcher. He wasn't, actually, if we're being honest. But I just hope they see all he's accomplished. There are impressive statistics here, and there's no denying that he was a great player, an elite catcher for a good chunk of his career. Whether or not that's enough for voters, those 12 seasons, the 3 rings, the MVP, the batting title, that remains to be seen. Of course, this will sit for a couple of years now. Debates will continue, and then it'll heat up. 1 December now. How many was it? Like 4 years from now? 5 years it takes?
Yeah, 5 years.
So in 5 years, we'll come back to this and we'll see what happens.
First year of eligibility should be 2026.
GMs for 2026.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're still around to kind of look back at these videos. I think that'd be super cool. But, for now, we just have to wait and see. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments below. I obviously do think that he could get in. Will, not so much, but
before we go, I think this might be the first video we haven't unanimously agreed on whether or not he's going.
Is it?
Yachty, we agreed. Nelson Cruz, Yachty, we agreed that he would make it. Nelson Cruz, we agreed that he wouldn't.
Greinke, we would.
Greinke, we agreed that he would.
Well, Yachty, I think we were kind of torn.
I thought you came around by the end of it. We'd have to go back.
I might have. I think present day, I have come around. Since that video, I have come around. So you got me there. But yeah, this is the first one where
this might be the first one where we're split.
Yeah. So catch us in 2026, right?
2026, yeah.
2026, catch us. You'll be how old? 27? 28?
Fuck, I don't know. Too old.
We'll be old.
I'll be 2026. 5 years from now, I'll be 28.
It might be GMs for Parenthood by the time Posey gets inducted. But for now, let us know your thoughts, because I think this is a hot topic right now going around baseball. But for Will Polston, I've been Matthew Perry. It's been GMs for Hire. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.